Representative Gaetz.
Let's put the slideshow back up that we were discussing earlier. This was at the Air Force Academy instructing students on how to use inclusive language. We had Secretary Kendall here, and when we got into the whole mom and dad thing, Secretary Kendall said, yeah, we probably aren't going to tell students they can't say mom and dad. That was inartful. So if there are other things here that are inartful that you want to disclaim, that's a totally reasonable thing for a person to do. So I want to start with this contention that to be inclusive, cadets would have to not use the term colorblind or say we're all just people. Is there something wrong with aspiring to be colorblind in the United States military and particularly the Air Force Academy?
Sir, I think it depends on how a person uses that term in context. I think that most people, if you're of a different race or a different color, that you don't want to be, you want to be seen for who you are. You don't want someone to look at you and not see, in my case, a black man, because that's who I am. I don't want you to be blind to that, but I want a person to accept that and to understand that and to include me as if they would include any other person that might be of a different color.
Well, we as a country were in many ways educated on the concept of colorblindness through the civil rights movement. And in Dr. King's many remarks, he would talk about the virtue of judging one another not by the color of our skin, not you as a black man, me as a white man, but by the content of our character. Do you worry that the Air Force's critique of colorblindness could be viewed as a critique of the very values that undergird the civil rights movement?
I don't think so. In my interpretation of Dr. King's words, he's not saying don't recognize the color of a person. He's saying once you recognize it, don't judge them by that color.
Didn't Dr. King explicitly call for colorblindness?
I think he called for what he said. Don't judge people
right,
by that, and that's what I meant.
I want to use, because we're talking about specific terms and language.
Right.
So Dr. King did explicitly call for colorblindness, right?
He may have. I'm not sure of when he did that.
I'm just starting to think maybe instead of like teaching that we shouldn't say boyfriend or girlfriend or mom or dad or whatever, maybe we should actually get back to the core of the values of the civil rights movement, because if we learned about, you would be able to answer these questions more thoroughly if maybe we had a greater connection to the thoughts of Dr. King and maybe a little less Ibram X. Kendi. What about the statement, we're all just people? What's offensive about that?
It's not that it's offensive, sir.
Well, it's not inclusive, because this is saying not, underlined, not, we're all just people. So why is that a not? I thought we're all just people. That sounds inclusive to me.
In the context that this slide was presented, what the folks who presented it were saying was recognize people for who they are, that we don't always all look alike, that we're not always of the same gender.
But why do the words "we're all just people" serve as an affront to that concept?
Well, I think the idea is that we should all be treated as equals. We should.
Well,
all
what
be
about
treated
we're all
as
just
equals?
people? But I got to get you back to the words on your
Okay.
slide here.
Yes, sir.
So the words on your slide say we're all just people, and you say that's a bad thing because we have to say that we're all equal. Does that seem so circular to you?
Well, I think in the context that it was presented, the slide is a bit out of context when you can't present it in the way that it was presented to the cadets.
I mean, I've gone through two of them. I'm providing as much context as I can. Are cadets are punished if they talk about color blindness in a positive way?
Absolutely not.
Are they punished if they say boyfriend or girlfriend rather than partner?
Absolutely not.
Are they punished if they say the disabled as opposed to people with disabilities?
They are not.
Are they punished if they say transgenders instead of transgender people or service members?
They are not.
Are they punished if they say mom or dad instead of parents, caregivers, or guardians?
They are not.
Okay then, so why are we teaching it?
What we're teaching is to understand a person's context, to understand how to talk to people within their context so as not to offend until you get to know your people, and that's how we build effective teams.
What I think you have to realize is that when you critique colorblindness and when you critique statements like we're all just people, that is the divisive activity, that in the name of diversity and equity and inclusion, we see some of the most divisive rhetoric. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Ranking Member Kim and I are going to defer to members on each of our sides before we ask our questions, so we will begin with Representative Gaetz.
A diverse and inclusive force is a war-fighting imperative. This is on a slide at the Air Force Academy. General Clark, do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that statement, sir.
So, I mean, were the Mongols diverse?
Well, sir, I'm not really as versed on Mongol warfighting as I am on U.S. warfighting.
Were the Vikings diverse?
Again, sir, I'm looking at our country, the most diverse country in the world.
Sure, but this is about a war-fighting imperative. How about the force in Ukraine? Are the Ukrainians fighting the Russians a diverse force?
Sir, once again, my concern is the people that I'm charged to build into leaders.
Right, but you would acknowledge that throughout history, including present history, that statement hasn't borne true in every example, right?
Sir, what I would say is that those countries have to rely on the full force of their population to build a war-fighting force to win our wars, and that's why it's important for us to be diverse, because our nation...
So let's look at the population that actually makes up the fighting force frequently. Now, we have more men than women, right? 70-30-ish?
That's correct.
And of the men we have, most of them are not transgender men. Most of them are cisgender men, right?
Yes, sir.
But yet, at our academies, we push something called the Brooke Owens Fellowship. Are you familiar with that?
I am, yes, sir.
And in that fellowship, it specifically says, if you are a cisgender man, this program isn't for you. So you just said that your answer on why we do this full hug of these diversity concepts is because it's all about the fighting force that we draw from, but you're literally pushing a program in the academies that says, if you're a cisgender woman, a transgender woman, a non-binary, agender, bigender, two-spirit, demigender. What's demigender?
Sir, that's a term of the people that are eligible for that particular scholarship that is available to. It's a person who looks at their gender in a different way than I do, sir.
Well, sure, that's all of these people. You're a cisgender man. You don't even get to apply.
Well,
do you know what demigender really means?
I'm not really sure, sir.
Right. So, do you know what agender means? All one word, not a space gender, but agender.
Sir, I don't.
Right. So here we are pushing a fellowship, calling for people that you don't even know what the words mean, and the number one group of people, the cisgender men, are excluded. Now, in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, should we be pushing programs that we can't define that exclude the largest group of service members?
Well, sir, first, that program is not an Air Force Academy program. It's a program open to our entire country.
Right,
so
but
you
guys advocate for it within the academy.
We allow our cadets to apply for it.
Why are you allowing your cadets to apply for a program when you cannot define the basic terms of eligibility?
Because it's an opportunity for us to develop them as warfighters, and we look for every opportunity that we can.
But you don't even know what the words mean. How can you use this as a way to develop the warfighters if you don't know what it means?
Well, some of those terms may not be applicable to us at the Air Force Academy, but some are.
But if you don't know what they mean, it's hard to tell if they're applicable or not. So I think one of the reasons why some of this stuff has gotten into the academies is because we don't have the same oversight from the Board of Visitors. And, Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from the Washington Examiner entitled, "To Push Woke Ideology, Biden Illegally Gutted Military Academy Oversight Boards." And so in this piece, it goes through a timeline where on September 8th, 2021, all of President Trump's appointees were fired. On September 17th, Secretary Austin created Board of Visitors subcommittees, and then he populated those subcommittees with people who weren't on the Board of Visitors. Have you ever seen that happen before?
Sir, our Board of Visitors is populated and supports us in great fashion.
Right. So. What about the subcommittee? Are there people on the Board of Visitors subcommittees who are not on the Board of Visitors?
I can't answer that, sir.
Seems like something we ought to know.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure.
Right, but that would be odd, right? I mean, here, okay, let me ask the question this way. You don't have any basis to disagree with the reporting here in the Washington Examiner that literally we have people who are not on the Board of Visitors who are serving on these subcommittees. You have no basis to disagree with that, do you?
Sir, I'm not exactly sure the question you're asking, so I'll have to take that for record so I can understand what you're
Look forward to
exactly what
future
you're
rounds, I
asking.
hope. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Escobar.
Hi, xin chào tất cả các bạn. Chào mừng các bạn đã quay trở lại với video của mình. Hôm nay mình sẽ hướng dẫn cho các bạn tô màu bức tranh chiếc xe máy. Mời các bạn hãy cùng đón xem hết video của mình nhé.